Thank you for joining us today. We are really happy that you were able to come today to our session. And today's session is how to identify persons at risk for emotional crisis. This is part of a 6 series webinars for CHW's community health workers, promotores, CHRs. And today we will have Yaderi Ramirez again presenting, and we're really excited because last week's presentation was awesome and we had a lot of questions, a lot of interactions, and we're really happy again to be able to provide this session. And again, my name is Floribella Redondo. I'm the Executive Director for the Arizona Community Health Workers Association. And my co-facilitator is Kenia Zuniga, Director for the Rural Arizona CHW Workforce Development Network. And our presenter is Yaderi Ramirez. And the objectives that we're going to be covering today is to identify the emotional responses of community health workers who are working in addressing the impact of coronavirus in their communities. And the second one is to provide community health workers with basic tools to manage emotions caused by the coronavirus pandemic. We all know that we are a stay-at-home in many states. We also know that in many states, they're also talking about opening again to businesses, to organizations to come back to work. We are really stressed about that, and we have a lot of our friends and colleagues are working in those states, and they're reaching out and saying we are really stressed because we are not ready. We don't have a plan, and we're just afraid of going back to our communities. So these webinars are really trying to address that stress, that crisis, that fear that we are all really perceiving among our coworkers, but also we're also feeling them ourselves. So thank you again for connecting today. Like I said, our presenter is Yaderi Ramirez, and we presented her. This is her bio, and you will have her bio once we share the link for this presentation today. And please, if you are not receiving the links, please send us an email, because we want you all to have the link to see the presentation today or tomorrow or next week, or share with family, with friends, with coworkers, whoever you need to share with. And you please feel welcome. Also, the other thing that I wanted to remind you is that unfortunately, we do need to register every single week for the sessions, just because our persons, our collaborators, CHEC, that is going to be providing the certificates on the 1.5 hours of participation for every single topic, they need to see that you register for that specific topic, so you can actually receive your certificate. And those certificates, we are working on them, so there we have a lot of them to be delivered by next week. So please let us know if you do not receive yours, but please do register ahead of time. Our sessions are at 2 p.m. Arizona time. That means that if you're in the East Coast, it's 5 p.m. Eastern time. So I know there's been a lot of confusion on that. So thank you again for coming today. Please let us know if you have any questions. We have the chat and we have the question box as well. Please put all your questions in the question box so we can actually get to them, and all your comments in the chat box. Thank you again. And with further ado, we start with Yaderi on webinar 2. Thank you, Yaderi. Stop sharing. I'm sending it to you. Oops. Stop share. Now you have it, Yaderi.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yaderi Ramirez. Can you see the PowerPoint? Yes. Floribella, are you seeing the PowerPoint?
Yes, yes, yes.
Sorry. So today we're going to talk about people at risk of having an emotional crisis and results of the pandemic. So thank you very much, Kenia and Floribella, for this great opportunity. Right now we're going through a difficult time, and I hope that all this information will be helpful for you guys. If you work with patients, I'm sure this will be beneficial for you, also for everyone, because this is for ourselves. Everyone is going through this, the whole world. So I'm sure and I hope that you can get useful information. To start with, before we start with session 2, I would like to give a brief explanation of the previous session. If you didn't have time of joining us, I will tell you a little bit of the bullet points that we talk about. So we talk about managing emotions, and I started saying how potential the human being is, how powerful we are, our brain and our body are connected. So if we are having negative emotions, for example, sadness, anger, fear, how our body is going to see affected. Even though sad, anger, and frustration are considered negative emotions, those are good to feel. It's good if we sometimes feel stressed, if we feel anxious. However, it becomes a problem when those emotions are for a long period of time. That's why on the previous session, we talk about how to control those emotions, because it's normal if one day we feel sad and the other we feel happy. That's totally fine. However, when we feel sad, anxious, anger for 2 weeks in a row, that's when our brain can be affected. Also, our body and our behaviors. We talk about what are emotions. Emotions are our feelings in results of certain situations. For example, the situation right now of COVID-19. Some of us may feel stressed because we don't know how much time this is going to last. We don't know how much time we're going to stay working from home. We're going to stay not having the life that we had previously. We talk about how our brain can be affected, as we can see here in our picture. Our brain is going to be affected in different ways. For example, on the prefrontal cortex, that part of our brain on the front, it's responsible of our reasoning, problem solving, concentration. So that part of our brain can be affected. It can also shrink in size. That's why we have difficulty concentrating, taking decisions when we are under stress. Another part of our brain that can be affected is the amygdala. That little part on the center of our brain is responsible of our emotions. If our emotions are under control, that part of our brain is going to be affected. Another part is hippocampus. That part of our brain is responsible for memory and learning. This is the primary reason why when we are stressed, anxious, it's difficult for us to learn new things. It's difficult for us to memorize things. We tend to forget the things that we needed to do. And in result of that, we tend to have other problems after it. And there's more parts of the brain that can also be affected. Also, we talk about signs and symptoms of stress. We talk about how we can see cognitive, emotional, physical, and behavioral signs and symptoms in result of chronic stress, chronic anxiety. Cognitive symptoms would be those like the one I mentioned of having difficulty concentrating, having difficulty learning. Our physical signs and symptoms will be if you feel dizziness, if you feel that you're sweating because you're stressed. Those will be physical signs. If you have headache, stomach ache. Also, another types of signs and symptoms will be emotional signs and symptoms. Those will be your feelings. How are you feeling in result of your stress? Are you feeling frustrated, irritable, moody? And in result of all that, your behavioral signs and symptoms will be your reactions, your actions to those feelings. Maybe you're going to give up. You're just going to isolate yourself, cry, run. Your behavioral signs and symptoms will be the reactions of all those feelings that you're feeling together. The emotion cycle, we talk about how our thoughts it's going to create our emotion and how our emotion is going to create our behaviors. So if we start with a negative thought, consequently, our emotion is going to be sadness, anger, and our behavior is going to be giving up, crying, as I mentioned. However, if we start with a positive thought since the beginning, our thought is going to be motivation. Our feeling is going to be excitement, happiness, and our behavior will be I'll try new things. I'll continue to learn more. Right? So the outcome is going to be positive if we start since the beginning with a positive thought. Like I said, it's normal if we sometimes have negative thoughts because it's part of our lives. It's part of the human being. However, once we identify that negative thought, maybe um, before we face the behavior, before we do a negative behavior, change it, right? Maybe when we get to to the emotion part, we can notice, okay, feeling sad. Let's change it. I know it sounds really easy, and it's not, but that's why we're going to learn techniques of how to do that, how to try to do that. Then we talk about the levels of anxiety. We talked that there's 4 levels of anxiety, for example, mild, moderate, severe, and panic. Um, Mild anxiety would be normal anxiety that maybe we feel when we're going to do a presentation in class, when we're going to have a job interview. Um, that little anxiety that happens when you're going to do something new. However, and it's going to be increasing depending on the task. But the last level of anxiety, that is panic, that will be when you're having a crisis, when you're having a panic attack and you can't control anymore. You can't control your breathing rhythm, your heart palpitations, and you need the help from someone else. Also, we talk about defense mechanisms. Defense mechanisms are actions that we do unconsciously and results of stress or anxiety. Okay, for example, sublimation, repression, regression, denial. Also, we talk about coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms are actions that we do consciously. So after we notice that we have been depressed, we tend to think, okay, what can I do in order to feel better? And those coping mechanisms can be listening to music, talking to someone, seeking for help, writing a journal, dancing, exercising, eating healthy. Also, we talk about a breathing technique, how important breathing normally at a constant rate will be helpful. We learn how to breathe deeply. For example, it is recommended that you inhale for 5 seconds to then to exhale for 10 seconds. So that's going to give you the perfect time in order to make sure that you're breathing deeply enough. Because sometimes when we are stressed, we just breathe unconsciously. We're just breathing without noticing how fast our breathing is. And this is not letting our organs receive air, right? Our brain is an organ, and if we breathe correctly, our brain is going to receive what is needed to process correctly. Also, at the end, we talk about a cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's a therapy to try to identify the possible causes that are making your negative emotion or negative behavior. And once you identify the possible causes, you make a plan. Maybe you notice that you were sad, not necessarily because you're depressed. Maybe it was because of what is happening right now, like parenting, because you miss your friends, because you miss work, you miss going outside. And then it's going to change your mindset. You're going to recognize that it's not that you're depressed, it's just that you can change something else. And if you notice that it's because you're isolating yourself, you can use social media for this. You can send a message to your friends and be in contact while at home. Okay, so now we're going to talk about our topic for today, And the first question is, what is an emotional crisis? And the definition that I have here is emotional crisis is a transitional state of emotional, cognitive, and behavioral impairment categorized by the person's inability to make decisions and solve problems. So similar to what I told you about the 4 levels of anxiety, the same with other negative emotions, for example, stress. If we feeling stress, it's normal, like I said, if you have a presentation to do, if you have a job interview. However, if you notice that that stress is increasing and you see that you have difficulties concentrating, you have difficulties expressing yourself, you have difficulties doing the tasks that you were doing previously, that's when you're entering a crisis. Okay, when you're having a panic attack, normally it's not going to take more than 10 minutes that during while you're having the crisis. However, when you're having the crisis, you're going to feel that you were during that crisis for an hour or 30 minutes. It's going to be a lot for you. But sometimes you're getting to it. Maybe you're not having a crisis right now, but you're noticing how your emotional, your cognitive and behavioral, um, all those situations in your life are not functioning as normal as previously. And that's when you have to pay attention to those signs and change your mindsets, change your behaviors. And maybe you can ask, why do some people can pass through difficult times like if nothing happened? And this is because of resilience. Resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. So everyone has resilience. However, some people maybe know how to manage their emotions better than others, or maybe because other people have a lot of things in the mind, have a lot of things to do, that maybe they don't take the time that it's needed to pay attention to their emotions. So resilience is something that we can have if we know the techniques to manage our emotions. And resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. So now we're going to talk about the situations that are outside the individual. So there's situations that we don't have control of, and the situations are, well, situations that we cannot control. For example, natural disasters. Also, another example would be the pandemic that we're going through right now. In reality, there's not much that we can do. If we just follow the directions of our state, of staying home, distance, watching our hand, that's how much we can do. There's nothing more that it's on our hands. So that can be considered an outside situation. War is also a situation outside from us. Crimes and terrorist acts, deceased or missing family member. Every one of us would love to always be together as a family. However, that's life. And with these situations, when we pass through all these situations, we're going to feel sad, depressed. But like I said, it's nothing that we can do. The only thing that we can do is to learn how to go through that process. When someone, a family member dies, we have to go through a process. Everyone goes through that process differently. Others go through it faster, slower. But the good thing is that we have to pass through it. And with help. Sometimes it's going to be really difficult to pass through that situation alone. Another outside problem is accidents and illnesses. Illnesses can be considered the COVID-19 that we are suffering right now. Harassment, discrimination, bullying. We can control just what is happening with us, but we cannot truly control what is happening in our community in regards to bullying, in regards to discrimination. Yes, we can pass the word of prevention, but that's all we can do. dismissal, unemployment. Let's say that a factory where you work is going to close, or you're going to be unemployed. It's something that you can't control. Legal issues too. Um, for example, if you have an accident at work, and that would turn to a legal issue. So those outside problems, we don't have much control of it. The only thing that we can do is learn and have the patience to manage those feelings. Now we're going to talk about internal conditions. Okay, we're going to talk about the emotions that, yes, we have more control of. For example, existential crisis. And existential crisis, this happens more in adolescence. For example, they're going to pass through a time where they're going to have a lot of questions about yourself, a lot of questions about the life. And this is really normal. And I can say that this also very similar, this is very common in young adulthood. For example, when you get to the point that you have to decide what to study, that you have to decide your area of employment, this is an existential crisis that is very common, and we just have to know how to manage it. Okay. Identity crisis, that's very similar to existential crisis. Identity crisis is also very common in adolescents. And if you guys are parents or have patients that are adolescents, this is very important for you to understand that maybe this is the reason why you think that they don't care about anything. You think that they isolate yourself. No, maybe they want that time to think about their identity, to think who I am. Because that question of who am I is a question that all of us should ask us to ourselves. However, when the answer becomes so difficult, it's when an identity crisis can start. Vocational crisis, similar to what I mentioned, when you have that question of what can I study, but what if this, what if that you have a lot of questions altogether. Another one is crisis of consciousness. For example, spiritual, religious, ideological. And also this is very common in adolescents too. As children, we tend to follow the religion, the spiritual beliefs of our parents, right? However, when we get to adolescence, we tend to start thinking more about ourselves. Do I really believe on that? Do I really want to follow that path? And everything is combined as when you start with your identity questions, with your crisis of consciousness, thinking of what is right, what is wrong. Another one is couple crisis, sentimental. And same, this can start in adolescence. However, this is a very common problem in adulthood too, when divorce can happen. When you see that when you married, maybe it's not how you think it was going to be. So a lot of questions that come to your mind. You were your whole life just by yourself, taking decisions by yourself, and then once in a sudden it's you and someone else, you and kids. So it's a change, right? And it's normal. That's why there's professionals who dedicate themselves to couple therapy, because this is an area that people need help. So this is very normal. Another one is developmental crisis in childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and late adulthood. So every developmental time, there's different changes in our body and brain that are happening, and we have to consider this. Actually, our frontal part of our brain that is responsible of making decisions, reasoning, solving, problem solving, that is developed, well developed until the ages of 21 approximately. So this is the reason why as an adolescent, as a young adult, you can't take those decisions that you would like to. However, even though as an adult, that part of your brain is developed, You can also have difficulty solving problems. Why? Because you have a lot of things in mind. You have employment to take care of. You have a family to take care of. So as you're getting older, more responsibilities that you have to take care of. Okay, so this is very important to take this in mind. Also, as a um, in late adulthood, well, other crises come up. Okay, you notice when you are old, when you get to the age of 60 approximately, you get to the age that you ask yourself, am I comfortable with everything I did when I was young? And if your answers come to be no, that you're not comfortable, that's when depression comes up. That's why a lot of elderlies are depressed their last years of their life. And this is sadly, and that's why it's very important how as adults, how as young adults, um, how important is that we do the things that we want to do and do the things that we are sure that later we're going to feel proud of. Because if we get to the point that we notice that I lose all my time, I did this negative behaviors, that's when depressions comes up. But if you get to the age of 60 and you notice that you enjoy your life, you're happy with your grandchildren, with your children, you're going to be happy the rest of your time. And you're going to feel happy, proud. Okay, now we're going to talk about the cycle, similar to what I mentioned previously. So an event, for example, COVID-19, um, after that, our thoughts and our emotions are going to be based on our perception. So similar to the picture that we have here. There we can see either a 6 or a 9, right? Based on your position. So the event is happening. It's happening all over the world. However, it's about us, how we're going to feel about it. Are we going to feel anxious? Are we going to feel depressed? Are we going to feel frustrated? Or are we going to feel that hope that this is going to happen maybe in 1 month, but everything is going to be normal again? Everything is going to be okay. Are we going to feel motivated to use this time to do things that we didn't have time to do before, to do exercise, to be with our family, to learn new things? Okay, and once we decide our thoughts, our perception, we're going to have our feelings. Okay, if we decided that I'm going to frustrate myself, our feeling is going to be helpless. Okay, we're going to see that everything is bigger than us. Now, that's when emotional crisis can start. We're going to feel that no one can help us, okay? That we don't have the answers to the questions that we want, okay? That we don't see an end to this problem. But once again, you can change it. If your perception is, I'm going to use this time appropriately, then your feeling is going to be motivation. You're going to get motivated to see, what can I learn during this time? What activities can I do with my children? Okay, and emotional crisis will be deleted from the cycle. Okay. Now we're going to talk about individuals with greater vulnerability to having an emotional crisis. And these people are the ones who have frequent and intense feelings of loneliness and hopelessness. If you isolate yourself during this time, this is very common that it's going to lead to a crisis because you're not expressing your emotions. During this time, it will be good to have time with your family members at home, to play games, talk about how you feel. Maybe not necessarily play games because you want time for you. Everyone wants to do different things, but just asking, how are you? How are you today? Or how are you feeling about this situation? Do you miss school? This is a question you can do. Do you like working at home? Maybe you recognize that you loved working from home, and you recognize that love school. I'm a high school teacher, and I say to my students that this time is good for them to see how important school is. I know they still can educate themselves from home, but it's not the same. They don't have someone who is explaining to them with motivation. They just have to read from a screen. But it's different, right? That's why you have to ask that question. Maybe your kid is going to tell you, "Oh, I love staying in school. I I mean, I love staying home." Just starting a conversation. And then people with frequent and intense thoughts of negativity, catastrophic and rigid thoughts, that's the people that can lead to a crisis. Also, frequent and intense attitudes of repetitive and compulsive. Sometimes when we are stressed, we tend to have compulsive attitudes. Maybe we're going to say we're going to do things that we are going to regret after it. And that's why it's very important to control that, because that's when the cycle comes up. If we do something that we didn't want it to do, then we're going to regret. And there we start with a negative thought once again. Once we regret, we're going to feel sad because of what we did. Okay. However, if we regret it once, we'll just make sure to change your mindset. Make sure to, okay, I did it once, I'm not going to repeat it. It's okay if we commit um, things that we didn't want it to do. That's fine. That those are errors, that we are humans and it's normal. But the good things of it, and it's not going to be an error, if we notice what we did wrong and we don't repeat it. If we don't repeat it, it's not going to be an error. It's going to be learning. Okay. Also, another people who are vulnerable to COVID-19, to these situations, are people with anxiety attacks that have a diagnosis or that having suffered of anxiety attacks, panic attacks, or OCD. OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder. That's a type of anxiety. Okay, if you want everything to be in a certain order. Okay, if you have compulsive actions, compulsive behaviors of something in particular. If you have depression, this can also affect you. I know that we need to go out in order to do different things, not stay home. However, you can still open your windows, you can still open the door, you can still go to a patio. So there's things that you can do. So depression, it's also vulnerable if you suffer from that. Also, people who have a diagnosis of victims of abuse or addiction, that can also make you vulnerable if you suffer from this. However, I know that you cannot go to therapy since you have to stay at home, but there's a lot of crisis lines that you can contact via phone, via message, that they can help you with this. And at the end of the presentation, you can see the crisis lines that you can contact if you feel that you need help. Also, individuals who are suffering or suffer a crisis different to COVID-19. So for example, right now, besides COVID-19, you're going through a difficult time because you're going through a divorce. You're suffering because you don't have employment. So if you're also combined COVID-19 with other difficulties that you have at home, that's going to make it more difficult, but it's not impossible for you to control it. Okay, there's always a possibility for you to control it. Environments that can lead to an emotional crisis. Hostile environment. If you are on an unfriendly environment, if you feel uncomfortable in your environment, this can lead to an emotional crisis. However, I always recommend communication. If you don't like something that is happening at home, communicate it. Communicate it. Maybe the other person was thinking the same, but also that person didn't want to start the conversation. So starting the conversation can help a lot of things. Being negative, it can also lead to emotional crisis. We we have to try to be the positive as positive as we can. I know it sounds really easy to be positive, but that's why I'm saying to try. No tolerance. Sometimes if you're in a hostile environment, having no tolerance is going to go hand in hand. Since it is an unfriendly environment, uncomfortable environment, maybe everyone is going to be mad, angry. But like I said, communication is the key. Disorganized, maybe if you notice that you see a lot of disorganization in the room and you're uncomfortable. And this also, right now we're focusing on COVID-19 of the problems that we can face at home, but also this can be, for example, at work. If we see that our work environment has this characteristics, that can also lead to an emotional crisis. So same, if you communicate this to your coworkers, your supervisor, that can change. Rigidity, if they are so strict, okay, being strict, it's okay because you have to put rules in order for things to go straight, to follow those rules. However, there's also sometimes being flexible is okay. And also an imbalance in the economic, biological, social, and emotional areas. It's the same if you're going through other problems besides COVID-19, economic problems, if you have an illness besides COVID-19, if you feel isolated, remember that we are distancing ourselves physically, but we can still be in contact emotionally. We can do FaceTime, we can use Google Meets, Zoom, a lot of media apps that we can use for this. This is an action plan that explains what we can do when we are having a crisis. And this can be you if you're having the crisis, but also if you work with patients, and not only if you work with patients, but if you have a family member that you notice that it's having a crisis, you can do this. The first one is approach and assist with any crisis. Okay, so first you're going to approach the person that is having the crisis. If you don't know the person, you can introduce yourself. It's always recommended to ask if the patient of the person needs help. I know that sometimes if they are having a crisis, they will not be able to respond to you. Remember that their brain is going to be affected and they're not going to have their functions as they tend to have normally. But it's always helpful to ask if they need help. Also, always to call 911. Even though you're helping the person, it's always a great idea to call 911 because you may need help later on, or shout for help if someone is near you. Second step would be listen non-judgmentally. Okay, if the person can talk, it would be great if you ask what's happening, and it would be great if the person will open himself, herself to you and will tell you what's happening. However, listening non-judgmentally is very important because it's time for the patient or the person to tell you the feelings. Okay? It's not time for you to maybe get advice right away. It's time for that person to open up, okay, and to listen. Third action plan. The third step is give support and information. Okay, now that the patient opened up to you, you can give support to them. You can give advices that are positive, try to keep it positive. Also, you can give information about resources. If you know someone that gives therapy, if you have the number of a crisis line, okay? And it's always better if you give the number right away, not just telling them, oh, you can go on Google and search for crisis lines and it will give you the number directly. No, sometimes they don't have the mind to do that. And remember, your memory is going to be affected and they can forget. So it would be better if maybe you, during that time, you search for the number. You even maybe call at that time, or you just give him the number to call later, okay? Next step will be encourage appropriate professional help. Once again, encourage the person to go. Maybe the person is going to tell you, yes, I'm going to reach them out. But if you can't, 1 week after reaching out to the person, if you have the ability to do that, right? Because maybe you don't know the person, you can call them, text them to see if they schedule an appointment with a professional, okay? You can do that. You can ask, not necessarily the person has to give you details of what you did and what you didn't, but it can just to show interest, just to ask, do you follow up with a professional? How are you feeling? That's going to be helpful. And last step will be encourage other supports. If you see that maybe the problem is because the person doesn't have communication with their partner, with their family members, with co-workers, friends. So you can encourage that. You can encourage, how have you been feeling? Do you communicate yourself? Do you communicate your feelings with someone else? So you can keep in contact, following up with the patient. And now we're going to, what can people who are vulnerable to an emotional crisis do? And these are some things that people who are having an emotional crisis do without any material. They can do it at home, they can do it at work. And the first one is practice relaxation techniques. For example, the one I showed you last session about breathing, and the one I mentioned today, it's about breathing 5 seconds, keeping your breath for 4 seconds, and then exhaling for 10 seconds. So that's going to give you a chance for your breath to be deep enough, okay? Balanced diet, it's also very important. There's nutrients, food that it's going to make you feel better, okay? Reducing carbohydrates, eating protein, that's the one that's going to give you energy. Practice exercise. Exercise, it's very important. It's going to make you feel better. Also, maybe you're going to see the changes in your body and that's going to motivate you to keep on going. Find enjoyable recreational activities. I know that maybe during this time that we have to stay home, it's difficult for us to find recreational activities, but we can have a journal. That can be one. We can draw. We can go to the patio and do a lot of activities with our family members. As we can see here on the picture, it says that we can do aromatherapy. With that one, we need materials. We can also practice visualization, and it's like it is saying there, practicing visualization, okay? Not necessarily that maybe we are in front of the beach. It's just like visualizing it. We picture a beautiful picture in our mind. Our mind literally is going to think that we are having that good experience. Okay, our mind in reality doesn't know if it's reality or not. That's why our mind can get into anxiety mode if we just think about a negative image, if we just think about a sad image, an image that we don't like, our brain is going to automatically get into panic mode, or it's going to feel, it's not going to function as we would like to. Okay, so we can visualize beautiful images instead of images that are not going to make us feel good. Also doing yoga. Okay, there's a lot of videos that we can search on YouTube. Take a walk. Maybe that's going to be limited right now, depending on where we live. Spend time in nature. Like I said, you can open your windows, you can open the door, listening to soothing music. However, the music, I recommend to listen to music that makes you feel good, right? Because everyone is different. Maybe the music that makes me feel good is not going to make you feel good to you, but it's about perception too. Breathing deeply, like the one I mentioned, keeping a journal. Keeping a journal, it's going to help you open up yourself. Sometimes you can't even get in front of a mirror and talk to yourself. Express your emotions. That's going to make you feel better. It's going to make you feel open up. Also, art therapy, get a massage, meditate, see a movie, read a book. I recommend to read instead of being a lot of time on Facebook, social media, where fake news can appear. Fake news are all over the place, and what they do is that we just get tense. We just get worried. And reading a book will be a idea that you can do. I know that maybe if you don't have a book at home, there's a lot of libraries that are offering online books for free. So you can look for that too. Soak in a warm bath. Right now, we have to take care of our hygiene, so this will be a beneficial technique to do. Laugh out loud. Like I said, our brain doesn't know if what we are feeling is real or not. Okay, so if we just tend to smile, automatically our brain is going to think that we're happy, and that is going to send us a lot of behaviors that are positive instead of negative. So also that's not another thing that you can do when you're stressed. Just smile, and believe me, that's going to help you a lot. And have a warm drink. That's also very helpful right now. Another things that you can do is try to have support networks with friends and family. Like I said, you don't have to disconnect yourself emotionally, okay? Just physically. Try to generate neutral or positive thoughts, being positive instead of negative. Trying to have hope, faith that everything is going to be okay, that everything is going to come up to normal soon, and everything is going to be better. Try to learn something new. Let's use this time to learn a new, or no, learn to play an instrument, learn a new language. If we're a student, time to learn to register to free courses that I'm sure there's a lot of free courses online that we can look for those. There's a lot of things that we can do online, okay? Locate ourselves in the here and now. Let's concentrate on what's happening right now. Let's see to our surroundings. We have a home, we have food, we are okay, we are safe, we are with our family members. Let's not concentrate on what can happen. Anxiety comes because of overthinking of the future, and depression comes because overthinking of the past. So if your past was amazing, well, yeah, remember that so you can feel happy. But if you notice that what you did on the past is not making you feel good, let's try to keep it on the side. Same. It's good to keep thinking on the future, because yeah, you have to think, how am I going to look in 5 years, in 10? in order to make a plan on what you're going to do now based on how you would like to see in 5 years or 10 years. But if what you're thinking of it's positive, that's fine. Keep on doing that. But if you see that what you're thinking on the future is making you feel overwhelmed, worried, try to keep it on the side too. Okay. Okay, how to help someone who is in crisis. Okay, if someone is in crisis, try to be calm. Okay. Sometimes we're going to obviously get frustrated that we want for the person to be okay, and we're going to want to do everything at the same time, but being calm is going to make everything better. The other person can see, can notice if you're frustrated, okay? And if the person who is having the crisis sees that you're calm down, the person is going to feel better. Is going to think that everything is going okay. There's a chance of recovering, and there's a chance of recovering. So being calm is the first thing that we have to try to do when we are with someone who is having a crisis. Second one is speak clearly, slowly, and looking into each other's eyes. Speak clearly. Also, our brain is going to be affected on our senses. Okay, if we are having a crisis, we're going to have difficulty hearing what's outside of us. And also, if we speak slowly, that's going to help the person who is having the crisis to understand it better. Okay. Also, looking into each other's eyes just to make sure that the patient is okay. Another thing that we can do is introduce ourselves. If you don't know the person, like I mentioned previously, introducing ourselves, asking if they need help. If they can't talk, it's better if we take action. Okay, there's not, we don't have to wait until we have a response. If we see that the patient is in need of help, we have to take action. And like I said, shouting for help if someone is near you, and calling 911. Also, be in a safe place, preferably seating. Okay, you have to make sure that the environment is safe, and if the person is sitting down or even on the floor, that's better than being on their food. Also, if possible, give the person water. Okay, water, it's like breathing. Water is going to make you feel better. Also, is going to hydrate your body and also your brain. Okay, when we feel thirsty, that's when our brain or our body is dehydrated. Okay, we have to have the tendency to drink water, or no, every 30 minutes. We don't have to wait until we are thirsty. Okay, our brain and our organs, our body have to be hydrated the majority of the time if possible. Another thing that you can do is ask the person to put the tongue on the palate or to bring the lips together. This is going to make the patient conscious of their breathing. Like I said, sometimes they are breathing so fast that they don't have control of how they're breathing. They just breathing unconsciously. Also encourage the person to breathe normally, and inhale and breathe slowly with the person. So you can give the example to the person. You can tell the patient, okay, you're going to inhale for 5 seconds. Like I said, maybe they can't hear you well enough. So if they see the example with you, they're going to understand it better. So you can tell them, inhale for 5 seconds, and let's do it. Keep your breath for 4 seconds, and then exhale for 10 seconds. Okay, and they can do this at least 3 times or as much time that is needed in order for the patient to feel better. Also encourage the person to seek professional psychological help. Okay, you have to, after the patient feels better, because remember, it's not time for the patient to receive a lot of advices when the person is having the crisis. The advices will be better if they come after the crisis is okay. If when the patient can't listen to you, that's when you can give the information. That's when you can give the resources and encourage, not only giving the resources, because one thing is giving the resources and the other one is encouraging. Encouraging you want them to contact a um, professional that can help them with what happened. Because if they already had a crisis, that means that these signs and symptoms have been with that person for a long period of time. And it's something that the person has to consider. The person has to consider to not suffer from a crisis once again. Okay, imagine that when the patient is having an emotional crisis, the patient is alone. So it's going to be more difficult for the patient to recover, and it's maybe the patient is going to get frustrated because he or she is alone. So you have to encourage the patient that it's something that he or she has to take care of, and that sometimes we need help for that. Okay, and now we're going to learn a new relaxation technique, and this is called butterfly relaxation technique. And I'm going to put a video. It's a video that it's well explained. And I encourage you to follow what the person in the video is going to tell you. And I hope that this is going to help you and that you can do this technique when it's needed. Okay. Can you see the video?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
So we're going to finish off tonight with just a bit of a grounding technique. This is called the butterfly hug. You can do it with crossing your thumbs and hands in front of you and alternating here. If it's more comfortable to just tap on the shoulders, you're welcome to do that. And if that's not quite comfortable, feel free to go ahead and put your hands on your knees or on your legs and you can tap gently to yourself there. This is a wonderful, wonderful grounding technique because you can take this anywhere. And so whether it be at the office to help just bring down that intensity of emotion for a moment, whether it be at home, whether it be before bed, this is really, really beneficial. And whenever you're needing to get that emotion down a bit. So for those who like, you're welcome to join me. If it's more comfortable just to watch me, you're welcome to. You can also close your eyes. And so whatever's going to be best and most comfortable for you. So let's go and get started. And let's go and get started by just finding where's most comfortable for us. Just kind of experiment. Does this feel good here? Does this feel good here or on your knees? So take a moment to find that. When you find that place, let's go and get started with just a deep breath in. So taking a deep breath in. When you reach the top, hold for just a moment. And then exhaling. Just let it come out, just natural as can be. And then just slowly start tapping. Just alternating sides, alternating the taps, knowing that whatever you choose is A-okay. If you'd like, you're also welcome to add a positive affirmation to this. It may be I am loved. It could be I can do this. It may be I am in a secure and safe place. Whatever seems to fit for what your need is right now. Feel free to just add that in and just repeat it to yourself in your head. And just remembering to keep tapping for as long as it's comfortable. If you need to go a little harder, you're welcome to. If it needs to be gentle. Again, just experimenting and see what fits for you right now. And you're welcome to do that. And go as short or as long as till you feel just a little bit calmer or until you feel that it's good enough for today. So again, just breathing in and out and just tapping. Tapping for as long as you'd like. And then whenever you're ready, when you've hit that spot that feels A-okay or good enough, go ahead and just pause there for a moment. Just letting your hands rest, letting your body rest. And if you'd like, feel free to take one more deep breath in, holding for just a moment. And then when you're ready, exhaling, just letting the air flow out all natural and just whatever comes. That's a butterfly hug. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, can you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, so I hope you liked the relaxation technique. I found it really helpful. Okay. And the name of the relaxation technique is butterfly relaxation technique, so you can also look for it. Okay. And like she mentioned in the video, during that time, you can think about, you can put on your mind pictures that are going to make you feel good. Okay, they're going to make you feel calm, not about negative emotions. And also you can come up with positive affirmations. For example, I'm loved. I feel happy. I feel excited, encouraged. So you can add positive affirmations that are going to make you feel better, right, during that time. All right, so now I'm going to finish with a quote, and the quote is, rise above the storm and you will find the sunshine. Okay, so right now we're going over a storm. The whole world is going over it. However, if we think positive, we have hope, faith, we are going to overcome this successfully, okay? Also, in the first session, I mentioned that chronic stress, so stress that we have it for a long period of time, that's when we're going to see the effects on our brain. And like I said, we don't know how much time we're going to stay in quarantine. Imagine all this time being stressed, being worried, being anxious. Our brain is going to be affected after all this happened, okay? And also, we have to take in consideration the people that is looking at us, our behaviors, our children, they are going to imitate what we do, how we feel, they can also feel it too. So this is very important for us to think about not only about ourselves, but the people who is around us, okay? And also we tend to work with patients. We have to be okay with ourselves in order to help other people, okay? So thank you for your time. I hope you receive a lot of information that is going to be helpful for you, but also with your patients, okay, and your family members too. Okay, thank you. That's all. We're going to have time for questions. So Kenya, you can have the control now. I'm going to stop sharing.
Hi, thank you, Yaderi, and that's great information. Thank you for all that the techniques that you give us, and we have a lot of comments saying thank you to you, and that it's a great information that you give us. One of the questions that we have here is developing a developing a nervous tick in part of your face. Is that a normal sign of stress?
Yes, correct. That will be a physical sign and symptom of stress. So that's important to take in mind. So I would really recommend, if that's happening to someone, to seek a professional, because that can lead to other physical problems, to other chronic problems. But yeah, that's considered a physical sign of stress.
Okay, thank you. Another one is inaccurate information regarding with the pandemic and COVID-19 increase emotional crisis.
Yeah, that's why I really recommend to not spend a lot of time looking at news, even though the news are correct or accurate. Let's use that time to learn new things, to do things that are going to make us feel positive. Like I said, also, if we're watching the news, also our children or the people who is around us is seeing the same thing that we're looking at. And if we're feeling stress, they're feeling it too. And so let's change the mindset. Let's change the environment. It's okay to be informed. That's perfectly okay, but maybe no more than 1 hour a day. That I think that's enough. 1 hour a day to just get informed of the updates.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me go to the other ones. How can we help our client who may be vulnerable to emotional crisis if they do not have ways of communication, or for clients who are homeless?
Okay. So that's a really good question, because right now I know that the majority of community health workers or people who work with patients are communicating via phone, via email. And so if they don't have the resources to communicate with you, that makes it a challenge. Right now we can't go out of our homes. I'm not sure, maybe talking with a clinic, is there a way to giving flyers, obviously taking distance, or I'm not sure. I can think of something else right now because the majority of the sessions right now are through a computer, are through a phone. So being homeless and then having those resources makes it so difficult. Like I said, I would think about a flyer. I think that would be the most great idea that I can think of.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I don't think that I have more. I don't know if you, Flor, have more questions.
I don't. And they're just asking if they're gonna receiving the information. Yes, we'll be posting the links. Once we receive back the links from the recorders, we'll be posting and sending to you all. And they're asking for the realization technique link as well. So that's something that we can also post and send.
I have one here that says, what are the best resources for obtaining update information on COVID-19, and how often should we review the resources? Something like kind of the information that you already give us, but
Yeah, I would recommend no more than an hour a day, and it will be better if we follow CDC website, the websites that are accredited, that we know that it's accurate information. Besides Facebook, we can also follow live videos of our president, depending on where you live, right? Of your state.
thank you, Yadiri.
You're welcome.
So I think that, thank you, Javedi. I think that was great information. I really like how you were able to bring us back to last week and begin today with a new topic and just put it in a way that we could really understand. Thank you so much for your presentation. We had a lot of good comments, and I think that most of it, I think your information is so clear. It's really clear, and the voice that you have in delivering is really allow us to really understand and grasp everything that you're saying. So thank you again. I want to remind everybody that in every single place that you live, there are crisis lines and where you can actually access if you need to access any kind of services, if you have information. Also, there was a question right now, how do you work with communities when they don't have the resources or people are being homeless? How do you reach them if they have the needs? A lot of times the behavioral health specialists, the mental health specialists, and the resources that we have in the community are limited. So just make sure that you know what numbers to call, ask them. You can refer, you can call for the participant, for the client, for the patient that you believe might be in need of services, and you can refer them to them. And you can, specifically, you know that they're a homeless population and you've seen the need there, you can also talk to them, and so they can actually, because they do still continue going into communities, keeping all the distance and taking all the precautions and following the guidelines. They still continue providing the services. We also have the national hotline services as well. Please make sure that you reach out to all of them and ask questions, ask for resources, ask for whatever you guys need. This numbers right here can provide you with those information and the guides, and also resources available in your own communities. So thank you again. I want to say thank you for Jaderi because today she did this session, but next week we're actually transitioning our week webinar in English will no longer be on Thursdays. It'll be on Tuesday and beginning next Tuesday, April 28th at 3 p.m. 3 p.m. Arizona time. It means 6 p.m. Eastern time. And so we are shifting our date and our time. And the next topic will be crisis intervention. And it is required for you to log in and register every single week, just because we want you guys to receive your certificate for every single topic that you participate in. And again, thank you for attending, but also the collaborator that's going to be in charge of delivering the certificates, they're a little bit behind in putting them together. So please you will receive every single certificate for every single session that you attend. Just provide us a little bit of time so they can catch up with us. The same link, you can use the same link for every single week. And we're hoping that you can continue joining us. Remember, Tuesdays at 3 p.m. it'll be the English session. Wednesdays, 2 p.m. it'll be the Spanish sessions. And so we'll continue like that. Also, just wanted to let you know that Jaderi, as you all have seen her bio, she is a teacher. She works for high school students. So we are working together with Jaderi in putting a webinar to address the needs of the youth in our communities. And that'll begin probably next week. If we can put it together, and we are still looking for those two youth. We have identified them. We just need to make sure that they are on board. And we're really happy because it's going to be very interactive, and it's going to be addressing the youth and the needs and right now, probably the lack of communication between youth and parents. So we're really happy and excited about that. And hopefully we'll send out all the information to you all that have registered for this one. We'll be doing those. There will be 2 in English and 2 in Spanish, and we'll be doing them also on Friday at 3 p.m. And we'll send you the information as soon as we have it. Again, don't forget to register for the next topic here Tuesday, April 28th. And we'll send you the information for the next one with Jaderi. And thank you so much. And as you can see, we do have here the information for Jaderi if you need to reach her and have additional questions for her, or just any question that you might want to really get to her and just get a conversation going. Thank you again for joining us. We're hoping that we can continue like providing you needed services that we can, we all CHWs need them. We all need them. We are part of the community. We're part of this society, and we're going through the same situation as everybody else in the rest of the world. So thank you again, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Have a great day, and stay at home and stay safe, please. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Jaderi. Thank you so much. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.